Let's finally do an April wrap up. In April we had not a lot of discussions, but very good ones. We talked about reading when you're not concentrated, and I told you how I discovered that reading plot-driven books helps me read a lot more than focusing on denser books that I generally tend to like more and drift towards. So that also led to reading a lot more in April, but I also enjoyed your comments on this. What helps you read when you're not concentrated, and also how a lot of you said you just don't read. You do other things then. And when you can concentrate again, you can come back to reading. That was very interesting. Thank you very much. Also, we talked about the advantages of physical books over audiobooks and ebooks. For me, in this particular video, the point was that I hardly ever remember what I'm reading when I'm reading ebooks or audiobooks. I know the title, but the author name and the specific title is just not at the top of my head all the time. And a lot of you said you have the same problem, but some of you also pointed out how reading a physical book gives you more connection to it than reading an ebook or an audiobook. And that was very interesting because I read a lot of ebooks this month and I noticed that they are fading a lot faster and more than the physical books I read. So that was also a very interesting discussion. The last discussion we had was not about books, but about movies, especially on where to watch them and if it makes a difference if you watch them in the cinema or at home. And most of you said you don't understand watching movies on your phone either. You prefer a bigger computer screen or a TV screen, which I am happy to hear. And a lot of you said it also makes a difference what kind of movie. If it's maybe a rom-com or a documentary or just a character story, that you said it doesn't really make such a big difference and you don't miss out watching them on your computer or on TV. But a lot of you agree with me that big impressive imagery and action blockbusters are working a lot better on the big screen and are a lot more fun. A lot of you also mentioned that the price of the movies is what stops you going to the movies a lot, which I can totally understand, but then again, I just spent money on things I like a lot, and it is expensive, I think, everywhere. And when you think about it, a movie theater has to pay its overhead, no matter if the theater is full or if it's empty. And blockbusters get more people in the cinema, so you can get more people, and then you have to think about how much money of your ticket actually goes to the cinema, which is usually half, and the rest goes to the production company. So I think movie theaters are actually cheap for how much you actually get from them, but then again, it is a lot of money for a film. I also uploaded, of course, a letter to April, and I thank you all for the comments there. So let's rush into the books I read and start with The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss, which is a short novella and it's set in the Kingkiller Chronicle world, but it's not about quotes, but about Ori. And this is not a plot-driven book. There is no dialogue, there's no other character but Ori, and it's solely description of her life, of a week in her life and how she goes through it. Very descriptive, not a lot of things happening, very beautifully written, but you really have to like this kind of thing. I can recommend it, but I recommend maybe reading the acknowledgements first, checking out if you like what he says there, if that applies to you, because that story was like, yeah, this book is for me. The next thing I read was The Novice by Tara Matharu, and this is a bigger book. It's the first book in a series. It's fantasy, it's about magic. We have this young boy who has magic inside him. He's of course an outcast and goes into a boarding school to become a magician or a sorcerer, and he has to deal with a lot of things. You can already guess, the story is not very special. It has a lot of tropes. There are some very good ideas, some others were just like, yeah, whatever. And I did like some of the characters, I liked where things were going, but at the end of it, I was like, okay, we have a cliffhanger now, so we keep reading, but I'm not that interested in the story. I think the book could have deserved a little bit more editing and some points I was just stumped and everything. This just doesn't flow. Things felt a little bit off at times. It was a sort of fun book if you don't mind not smooth writing and if you don't mind the little tropes that are there, and overall it is an okay book. I already talked about those two books in a recent reads video, but the next book I haven't talked about. It's The Contrary Tale of the Butterfly Girl by Ishbel B., which is another adventure of John Lothard Esquire. He's a lord of the underworld. The first one was, of course, The Singularly and Extraordinary Tale of Mira and Goliath, which I highly enjoyed. The Contrary Tale of the Butterfly Girl didn't grab me as much. It had me confused at the beginning. I couldn't really remember the characters, what was going on, and it took a while to come back. And also the writing, since it's simple present and you keep shifting points of view from all the different characters, it can be confusing. But I had the same problem in the first book. By the end of it, I really enjoyed it. The main problem is for me the story. It's not as gripping, it's not as interesting, it doesn't flow as well as the first book does. But what I really enjoy about these books is that they do look like children's books, don't they? And I think they are mainly aimed at children because the main character is also a little girl. And yeah, it still isn't. It's very violent. It's a lot of gruesome things happening, but always with a smirking eye. And I had the feeling this book works perfect for reading out loud to children. Maybe not small children, but young kids, maybe 10, 12, who are not squeamish. But I don't know. It's a fun read. It's something different. I enjoyed it, but it didn't grab me as the first one did. Nevertheless, I want to read more about John Lothard. The last physical book I want to talk about, I technically finished in May, but I already uploaded a video and I really want to talk about it now. And that's Starflight by Melissa Landers. And I really enjoyed this book immensely. It's a fun science fiction adventure of two people running away from their past to their future, trying to find things and solve things and adventures and space pirates and a love story. Just watch my full review where I explain things better. Apart from these physical books, I also finished 2 ebooks. One I already reviewed, Unconventionally by Maggie Harcourt, which was a fun, also YA romance, but I enjoyed it because it was talking about conventions and behind the scenes of conventions and how the romance developed and the two characters got together. And the writing style was very nice. I enjoyed reading it, and the way the book is set up is you have a chapter at home and you have a chapter at a convention, then you have a chapter at home and a chapter of convention. And there's not a lot of time wasted on non-necessary things, and I enjoyed that. That way the story moved fast, you could identify with the characters, you probably know some people who are like the characters there, and yeah, I had a lot of fun reading it, and I probably gushed a little bit too much in the video because I loved it so much at that point. Now that it's been a while since I read it, I still enjoy the story, but maybe a little bit less long-lasting, but for a fun read, if you want that, I recommend it. The last book I haven't mentioned at all yet. It's Snow White Sorrow by Jace Cameron, and it's of course a fairy tale retelling, but it's got a little twist to it. We have a character who is half angel, and he was banned from heaven because he fell in love with the demon girl, and now he has to kill a lot of vampires to get back to heaven. That's sort of the setup. So he didn't do well with the vampire killing, he didn't reach the number he had to reach, so he has 1 more week to kill about 60 vampires, but then he finds out about Snow White, who's worth 99 vampires, so he tries to kill her and things happen. It's fun at parts, at others it drags along. For me, the thing I really didn't like is the sidekicks he get. It's sort of like Hansel and Gretel, but I don't know, those two were annoying to me. I just really didn't like them, and so they got on my nerves. But there is a second book because there's a sort of cliffhangery open ending, and I don't know. I haven't picked it up yet because I didn't enjoy it that much, but I do want to know how it continues. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know in comments how your April was reading-wise. Did you read good books? Do you know any of the books that I read? Can you recommend fun books? And yeah, let's talk in comments. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.